Yo, what is up? It is your boy Zether, and I just gotta say, we just got the community tab, boys. So you guys better be active on the community tab because that's where I'm gonna start posting. I'm gonna start giving you guys heads up on what ifs, polls on the next what ifs. I'm definitely gonna be giving out like a little bit of everything, just polls for you guys. I just wanna really get to know y'all a little more. For those of you who don't have the Discord, I just wanna, it's gonna be a little bit of a way for you guys to get in touch with me, And also, one more thing, I almost am about to hit 2K, and your boy finna post a very, 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 very amazing what if that I've actually been working on for about a week now. So it's gonna be a collab, and it's gonna be golden. Trust me, it's gonna be golden. But that being said, this is gonna be what if Deku had Tai Lungs potential. And as we all know, Tai Lung was a badass in the Kung Fu Panda movie. So let's go ahead and get started and make sure I get this what if to what it deserves to be. But that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, guys, so this story actually all starts off with Deku's parents. Now, when Deku's born, his parents will actually be about countryside people, meaning that they won't really have too much in terms of money to offer for Deku. So as soon as Deku's born, his parents are struggling a lot financially, just trying to see how the hell they're going to be able to support this baby. And Hisashi basically says that they need to do something because with the baby, they were struggling already and living a pretty hard life, but with this kid, they're not going to be able to survive. As Inko just says that she knows, and she proceeds to tell Hisashi that they need to take him somewhere, as Hisashi says that they just need to take him to an orphanage, as Inko says, no, I have a better idea. We can take him up in the mountains where they have the temple, the dragon temple. As Hisashi's just like, the temple of the Kung Fu warriors, as Inko says, yes, like that could be the best thing for him. He could learn how to fight for himself, and he can become a good person instead of being in an orphanage where he'll never know if he's going to be adopted or not, and just having a horrible life. As Hisashi and Inko both think about this, and they both agree that this is the best choice for their son. They don't know what's going to happen, but they're going to trust that it's going to be the best choice. As Inko and Hisashi would leave Deku inside of a basket, and they would drop him on the outside of the temple. Now, this is about a week after, and this is when they had just dropped him off. Now, about 30 minutes in, Shifu ends up hearing a little bit of crying. And yes, I'm going to be implementing Master Shifu, except one thing that's might sadden a little bit of you guys. No other characters from Panda, meaning no Master Oogway, no none of that. And Chi, they're not gonna have Chi in this run. They're just gonna have strict fighting, strict like just what we knew in the first parts. All right. Anyways, that being said, we're gonna go ahead and truly get started. Okay, so this is when Master Shifu would open the door to see a baby crying, as he then looks at it, and inside is baby Izuku. He grabs him and decides to take him in and raise him as one of his own. And for the next couple years, 6 you could say, Deku was raised as Shifu's own child. Shifu would have loved him. And during this time, Shifu would have definitely exposed Deku to Kung Fu over the couple of years that he was there. Deku would have just been a normal boy up until this point, just playing around and getting to know all of the people who studied Kung Fu under Master Shifu. As one day Deku would decide to go inside there and watch Shifu do what he does, and really pay attention and see if he can do it himself. As Deku would secretly spy on Shifu teaching his class, and Deku would decide to see if he could learn that himself. As Deku would take the next couple weeks going in his room, just kind of mimicking everything that he saw Shifu would do. He would mimic the simple and basic moves that Shifu would be teaching his students, as Deku would be doing them flawlessly and fluently. As Master Shifu, or Shifu I guess you could say, would just be walking by his room just to see how Deku was doing, as he would peek open the door and he would see Deku doing moves that he had never seen another boy do before. As he saw that, he would then watch as Deku proceeds to throw kicks and punches and blocks and holds a perfect position, as Shifu would be astounded. He would then walk in and be like, Izuku, where did you learn to do that? As Deku says, I watch you from time to time, and I wanted to see if I could do it myself. Am I doing a good job? As Shifu would be like, you're doing an incredible job. You're doing it better than most of my students. As Shifu would tell Deku just to move his arm up a little bit, and that's that in terms of perfectly copying it. As Shifu, after this, would see that Deku has great potential, 50 times more than he had at his age, as Shifu would proceed to train Deku in Kung Fu and martial arts for the next 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. For the next 8 years, Shifu would end up training Deku in martial arts. As during those years, Deku would have learned everything that Tai Lung had learned. Everything. I mean everything. With the exception of Chi, because I'm gonna go ahead and take that out of the story because he'll be way too OP. Now, this is when Deku would proceed to basically just be tying up his gi, as he basically walks outside, and he will proceed to see Shifu, as he then sits beside him and asks him, hey, there's something I've been meaning to ask you. Shifu looks at him. This is about 1 year before the UA entrance shit, right? So this is about 2 months prior. Two months before, it'll be like 1 year prior to the UA entrance exams. Deku would sit next to him and look at him as he then says, hey, there's something I've been meaning to ask you. As Shifu would look at him and say, what is it, my boy? As Deku would say, can I become a hero? As Shifu would look at him and with wide eyes and say, what makes you want to become a hero? As Deku would say that, he wants to be able to save people. He wants to be able to bring hope to the valley. As, Shifu would look at him and say, if that's what you want to do, my boy, I will 100% support you. As Shifu would then walk up to his room, as he would then bring out the exact outfit that Tai Lung uses, the purple pants he would basically whip out the exact same outfit that Tai Lung uses, and Deku would put it on. As soon as he does, it would fit him perfectly, seeing that Deku's ripped. He's pretty ripped, like he's Tai Lung level. And when Deku stands in it, Shifu would look at him as he's just shocked at how great Deku looks at him. He would then look at him and grab him as he says, how much you've grown, my boy. As Shifu would actually be a little shorter than Deku. Deku at this point would be about 6 feet tall, and Shifu would be about 5'8". As Shifu was kind of short, and Deku would be a little taller than him. As Shifu would then walk up to Deku and hold up a couple pictures that he and Deku had taken when he was a kid. He'd begin to say, well, I remember when you were a baby. You used to have so much potential, and now I can see why. Go, my boy, and become the greatest hero. I'll help you out. As Deku's like, really? As Shifu then says, yes. And Deku and Shifu begin to plan things out, as Shifu then tells Deku that he's going to be basically buying him a small apartment, somewhere where Deku will live, and he will tell Deku that in order to keep training to become a hero, he wants Deku to have amazing grades and be excelling in the hero academy, I guess you could say. As Deku would be hyped and pumped. Also, Deku's not going to be a dumbass. He's going to be very, very smart. The Tai Lung intellect. And Deku would proceed to basically just walk out as he then bows to Mr. Shifu and says, thank you, Dad. This is when Shifu would have like a small teardrop go down his face. He then says, yes, my son. Now, this is when we got Deku essentially 1 month later being at the palace training, when Shifu would basically call him out, and he would then say that he wants to see how far Deku has gotten during these past 8 years. As Deku would chuckle and say, you want to fight me? Is that what I'm hearing? As Shifu would say, yes, I want to see which one of us has more power, more strength at this point. As Deku would proceed to laugh and be like, come on, Dad, you know you're stronger than me. As Shifu would proceed to look at him as he then says, I don't know that. That's why I'm trying to battle you. As Deku's eyes widen and he then says, very well. This is when Deku and Shifu get into a stance. As Deku would stand a little far away from Shifu, as Deku and Shifu rush at each other. And in one swallow instant, Shifu just can't bring himself to hit his son. He's about to drop him down with a simple hit hitting a pressure point that would have knocked out Deku. as Deku then rushes at him and goes, "Ah!" as he then smacks him and sends him flying a little far away. As Shifu then gets up and says, "Very well, my boy." As Deku then says, I did it. As Shifu would be smiling, as Deku and Shifu would basically proceed to have one last day together. As Shifu would proceed to have like some food getting ready for Deku. As Deku would proceed to smile. The very next day, Deku would take a train all the way down to the main city. As Deku would be arriving there, he would hear a large explosion. When he hears the explosion, Deku would think, what's wrong? As he would proceed to basically run as close to the explosion as he can. Now, in terms of the sludge villain incident, All Might would have actually ended up capturing him as well as dropping him this time. And he would still be a bystander at this point since, he knows that he dropped him by accident. This is when Deku would see this and would be like, great, I get to see some heroes in action. As Deku would be just watching, hopefully with a glimmer in his eyes as he then begins to look around and see what the heroes are doing. As he then says, why aren't the heroes doing anything? That kid's gonna die. As you can see the kid's eyes just stare at Deku as he's asking for help. As he looks right into Deku's soul and Deku just can't help it. Deku would rush in there and he would basically begin to run in an animalistic way as he then charges up at the sludge villain and sends a punch straight into it, getting his fist caught in the sludge. As the sludge would say, who are you? As he would then throw an attack at Deku, which would send Deku flying back. As Deku would get injured and say, damn, I guess physical attacks have no use on you. As he then looks around and sees what's going on, as he can see that the sludge villain is trying to, get away from the fire. As Deku would run towards the fire and coat his hands in it, kind of like the way that Tai Lung had done it against Master Shifu. This is when Deku would begin to rush at the sludge as he then says, ah! And then he begins to attack him like very viciously as the sludge begins to step back, as Deku begins to just burn the sludge and boil it with every single hit that he attacks. This is when the sludge would give Bakugo a chance to breathe for a slight instant as Deku would proceed to grab Bakugo and try to pull him. But before he can pull him, the sludge villain would go in for an attack. As All Might then catches it and says, thank you, kid. As he then sends a thunderous blow at the sludge villain, sending it flying just like he had done in canon. After this, the media would bombard Deku, asking him what his power is. As Deku would say that he's actually quirkless. So everybody would look at him and say, quirkless? And Deku would just jump off. As no. Deku would run off, trying to find his brand new apartment. This is when All Might would come in saying, I am here. As Deku would say, All Might, you're here. I just wanted to thank you for saving me back there. As All Might then looks at him and says, kid, you got guts. As he then proceeds to look at Deku as he then says, are you going to become a hero when you grow? As Deku would look at him and say, yes, I'm going to try to get into UA. And I'm going to train my hardest to become one of the greatest heroes of all time. I'm going to become somebody who can be looked up to. Just like you, All Might. I'll be the symbol of hope for everybody. As All Might hears those words and he then says, happy to hear that because I was actually going to ask you something. As Deku would say, what is it, All Might? As Deku would proceed to explain a one for all to him. And how it can be passed down like a torch. As Deku hearing this would just widen his eyes as he then says, quirks can be passed down? As All Might would explain to him that they can, as Deku would accept the quirk as well as some training from All Might, as Deku would not actually receive much training from All Might other than physical labor. Now, this is when Deku would basically have a little bit of help from All Might in terms of guiding him to his apartment, as Deku would make it inside of his apartment and thank All Might for his help. As he would then tell All Might that he'll definitely be meeting him at Dagoma Beach the next day, as All Might would jump off and Deku would be smiling as he then sends a text to his father saying that he just met the #1 hero. As Shifu would be like, you what? As Deku would say, and he offered me his quirk. As Shifu would be shocked hearing this, saying, the #1 hero's quirk for my boy. As he would have a proud smile down his face as Deku would then wake up the next day and basically run to Dagoma Beach. Deku would arrive at Dagoma Beach as he then sees All Might in his buff form and says, hey All Might, so when are we going to start training? As All Might would tell him to look around. As Deku would know exactly what he's going to have to do as he then kind of just puts his hand in his face and he's like, I'll get started. As All Might then smiles and Deku would proceed to basically lift the trash. It would take him about 3 months to do it in total. as Deku would have done it by himself. You know, he has superhuman strength, but it's not gonna, it's one person doing all that lifting, so it would take him about 3 months. After the 3 months, All Might would smile as he sees the clean beach, and he would ask how he did it so fast. As Deku says, well, he thought of it as training, and he did it as fast as possible, trying to complete it as quickly as possible. His muscle memory would have become adapt, and he would have been able to pick large objects very easily. Very, very easily. He would be able to pick up boulders, giant ones at that, and pick up large fridges, multiple at the time, stack them on top of each other, helping him to clear the beach by himself. After this, All Might would look at him and say, "Eat this." As Deku's like, "I'm not eating that." As All Might say, "You have to eat it to have my power. That's how it works." As Deku would say, "Are you sure you're not trying to play a prank on me?" As All Might would say, No, kid. No, I'm serious. This is how my quirk works." As Deku would be like, "Okay." As he would then proceed to take the hair and eat it. Now, this one, All Might would say that it'll take a couple days for the effect to clear. So he would tell Deku to come back tomorrow, as they're gonna start training with it tomorrow. Now, this is when Deku would proceed to go home and just rest, as he tells Shifu that he ended up finishing cleaning the beach, and he would tell him about how All Might had just gave him his quirk. Shifu would be so surprised and so happy for his son, as he would proceed to tell him everything about what happens during the next 10 months and keep him updated to everything. As Deku would say, "Will do." Now, this is when Deku would arrive the very next day, and All Might would look at him smiling, say, "Well, let's get started." He would then tell Deku to throw a punch, as Deku would reel his arm back. And instead of being a dumbass like Deku and just throwing a punch out willy-nilly, Deku would throw a weak punch out. And that weak punch would be at about 50% of One For All's power, as he would throw a huge shockwave up at the sky, almost changing the weather and clearing the sky. As Deku's arm would be in huge pain, as Deku would say, "Ah! What was that?" As All Might would be like, "Oh, yeah, right, I forgot to explain that." This is when Deku would actually have his arm healed for the next week. As All Might would basically just explain how All For One works to him, as well as Deku would be thinking about it. He would then say, "So it's kind of like water in your body. You have to have it everywhere." As All Might begins to say, "Exactly." As Deku would proceed to concentrate One For All throughout every limb in his body, everything that he can, as he would then activate 30% full cowling. This is when Deku would proceed to jump around and move at speeds he never thought he could, as Deku would begin to blitz around All Might, as All Might would smile and say, "Well, let's test it out." This is when Deku would smile as All Might and Deku get ready to begin in a fight, as All Might would rush in at Deku, with Deku dodging his blow easily and maneuvering it for a counterattack. Deku would move his arm out of the way, as he then throws a strong uppercut at All Might's chin, sending him flying backwards, as All Might would be wondering how the hell he dodged it. This is when Deku would begin to rush at him on all fours, as he then jumps on him using a sort of panther-like style and hits him right in the chest with a palm strike. As Deku would lose all of the air, reverting back to his normal Small Might form, as Deku's about to deliver the final blow, and he then stops. Says, "Are we done here, All Might?" As All Might just is like, "Kid, how are you?" As Deku would say, "I studied Kung Fu for 8 years of my life. I trained in the mountains." As All Might would say, "You mean the temple in the mountains?" As Deku would say, "Yeah, that's my father." As All Might would just be like, "Wow, it's amazing." Now, this is when things kind of take a change. All Might would proceed to ask Deku if he could show him a little bit, as Deku would oblige. And for the next I said it was 3 months, so for the next 7 months, Deku would proceed to just do lots of body weight exercises, giving him the full entire mass of Tai Lung. He would be a raging testosterone beast, as this man would be ready for 50% of One For All full cowling. Now, he would then activate 50% full cowling as he then warms up with it the day of the UA entrance exams, as All Might and Deku get ready to spar, as All Might's actually came a very long way since the beginning, and Deku just congratulates him, making a joke, telling him that before all he did was use his fist, as All Might would be like, "Yeah, I guess. I mean, I didn't think that I would actually have to use things like this." As Deku would say that this is martial arts is in everything you do. Even the movements that you had before, you were doing martial arts, just not the right way. As All Might would just be like, he would laugh, as Deku and All Might would get into a battle. This battle would be very amazing as Deku would end up victorious, of course, but All Might would have definitely put up quite a bit of a fight. Since Deku taught All Might everything he knew, Deku would have definitely been like, I'm your daddy, B. He would have been like, I'm your dad now, bitch. As All Might would just get up, and Deku would then proceed to just laugh as he then says, well, All Might, I better be going for the entrance exams. As All Might then looks at Deku and says, yeah, definitely. This one, Deku would proceed to walk over to UA, and as he's walking, he would see Uraraka fall. So he runs over there and picks her up. As he grabs her by the waist and picks her up, and she would turn around to see Deku with no green tips this time. No green tips. I'm taking that away. He would have black hair, no green tips, and he'd be very, very muscular and tall. And she would look back and say, oh, hey, as Deku would be in amazing shape, as well as being, what do I say? He'd be very, very attractive. This is when Uraraka would kind of start blushing, and Deku would be like, here, I caught you, sorry, I didn't mean to startle you, but I didn't think it would be good luck for you to fall before the entrance exams. And she would look back and say, oh, thank you, and she would begin to have a conversation with Deku saying, isn't it nerve-wracking how this will decide our future? As Deku and her begin to talk on their way inside, as Deku and Uraraka would just begin to, have a little bit of a conversation as they walk inside. This is when Deku would arrive inside, and as he would sit next to Bakugo for some reason. Now Bakugo would look at Deku as he then sees the kid who saved him a little bit ago. As he then looks at his direction and says, hey, thanks for saving me a while back. As Deku would say, oh, it's you. As he would say, it was no problem at all, man. I'm just glad you're safe. As Bakugo would say, hell yeah. As they would then, kind of bump fists, as Ida would look over there and say, hey, you two, quiet down. As he would then say, and the 0-pointer, no. As Deku would just stay quiet, and Bakugo would get up, flaring his explosion, saying, you better shut your mouth, Four Eyes, before I shut it for you. As Deku would just begin to chuckle, as Ida would have just gone quiet, and President Mike would have finished his instructions. They would have gone to the testing grounds, and this one, Deku and Bakugo would actually be in the same one, the same facility. Deku and Bakugo would be talking in the back, as Ida would walk up to them and say, you were very disrespectful to me inside. I want you to apologize. As Bakugo would say, I'm not apologizing to you for shit, jackass. As he would say, you called us out. I think we deserve an apology, if anything. As Ida would look at him and be like, damn ruffian. As he would begin to just walk away. As Deku would say, as Deku would just kind of want to say something, but just stay quiet, He wasn't raised to be a dickhead. He was raised to be, have manners and be polite. So, this is when the gates would open. And as soon as they opened, Deku would blitz out of there. He would go blitzing with black. Yes, the full Howling's going to be black energy off of him. Black lightning would just shoot off of him, I guess you could say. Black aura would shoot off of him as it emanates from his body. And Deku would proceed to run around in an animalistic fighting style. As he then jumps up into the air and spin kicks robots, punches through them, and takes pieces of the robots as he smacks them into other pieces. By the end of everything, Deku would have actually ended up acquiring about 969 points. As Deku would basically be standing there just breathing heavily as he then says, come at me. As he would then rush at more robots and begin to take them down. And this is when suddenly the ground begins to shake and this 0-pointer walks out. Deku would look towards that direction as he sees the girl who he had talked to at first be under some rubble. As soon as Deku sees this, he would rush at her at top speed as he then moves in a way that he had never moved before. He would move without telling his body to, as he would then blitz at Uraraka and grab her, running away, running her back to everybody else. As he would then look back at the 0-pointer as all of the people look at him and say, you're crazy, you can't be thinking of going back and taking that thing out. As they say, I know you were able to take out those robots, but they were small fry. They're nothing compared to that. As Deku would say, I got this. He would then proceed to rush at it as he then jumps into the air right at the 0-pointer's face as he then says, Hya! As he then shoots his large punch at the 0-pointer, sending it flying, and a giant wind pressure would blast off of it as the 0-pointer crashes onto the floor. And everybody stares in awe as Deku would not fall to the ground, but he would use the 0-pointer's body to rush at the ground as he would jump off of every piece of it up until he was safe to land, and Deku would land safely. As Deku would look back, and all the people who were watching this would begin to cheer. They'd say, "Wow!" And they would all begin to wrap around Deku as they would be like, "What was that?" As Deku would proceed to tell them that it was Kung Fu. As they would all begin to be like, "Well, that's amazing." As Deku would proceed they would ask what his quirk is, and he would tell them that it's a very strong enhancement quirk. As Deku would proceed to walk off the entrance exams, as Deku would proceed to go home. This is when Deku would text his father, telling him that he's pretty sure he passed, and the written exam, that was pretty easy. And the robot portion, he would have said that he's pretty sure if he didn't pass, then he was just not meant to be a hero. As Deku would just send us laughing emoji at his dad, as he then says, "I'm gonna make you proud." As Shifu would look at his son and say, no, as Shifu would see the text and just say, "I'm sure you will." And that is gonna mark the conclusion to what if Deku had Tai Lungs potential. If you guys enjoyed this, I'm definitely gonna be needing, let's go with 70 likes. I'm gonna be needing 70 likes for part 2. And that being said, this has been your boy Zether. Out.